Okay, so today we're going to take the GCF one step further, and we're going to factor out a GCF and then solve an equation. Okay, solve an equation. And so that means we're going to need to find that undistributed format, and we're going to create two equations from that. So let's go ahead and just quickly review how do we solve equations. Okay, because it's been a little bit. So I want you to think back to what we have going on here with 3x minus 5 equals 10. And I want you to remember that this is times 3 minus 5. So the opposite would be plus 5 divide 3. And I always start from the bottom on the right. So that would tell me what my first step is. So the first thing I'm going to do is add 5 to both sides. This one crosses out. The 3x drops. 10 plus 5 is 15. So I did my first step. So then the next thing I'm going to do is divide by 3. Remember, when we divide, we draw a line. This crosses out because 3 divided by 3 is 1. And 15 divided by 3 is 5. And I have my answer. Now, this is simply multiplication. So if this is multiply to, the opposite is divide to. So I'm going to divide by 2. This crosses out. N equals negative 14 divided by 2. That's a negative 7. Well, when I have an equation here, I know that I need to distribute. So 3 times 4 is 12x, and 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. And then if I think about what's happening to x, I see that I have times 12, which is divide 12, minus 15, which is plus 15. I know the first thing I'm going to do is add my 15. So 12x is equal to, and that's a 3. And if I divide by 12, I see I'm going to get a fraction of 3 over 12, which is the same as 1/4 or 0.25. Now, the way that I solve this equation is the same way I would solve all of these. I know that this is times 3 minus 9, so the first thing I have to do is move the 9. So I'm going to add 9, and I get 3x equals 9 because that goes away. Divide by 3, and x equals 3. Well, so what we're looking at is we have this equation of 5x squared minus 10x equals 0. Can I solve it exactly the same way as I have those up top? No, I can't, because I need to have a power of 1. If you look up here, all of these had a variable with a power of 1. So this is where the GCF comes in and factoring out that GCF. Okay, so let's just kind of go through that again, practicing that a little bit more, and then we're going to pull out our two equations and solve. So if I take a look at this one, I see I can take out a 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. Negative 15 divided by 5 is negative 3. Here's 2 n's and 1 n. I can take out 1 n. So I have 5n, a 1n minus 3. And it's done. 6, 12, and negative 4. Well, I can take out a 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. 12 divided by 2, that's going to give me a positive 6. And negative 4 divided by 2, that's a negative 2. And my t's, I see that I can take out 1. So 2t is my GCF, and I'm left with a 3t squared plus 6t minus 2. So that process is really important, because what's going to happen is we're going to have our GCFs allow us to solve these equations, okay? And we're actually solving what's called a quadratic. And we're going to get two solutions, okay? We're going to get two solutions. So the first thing that has to happen is they need to be set equal to 0. So you can see my first problem, it's already set equal to 0. The second one is set equal to 0. The third one is not. We'll get to that one in a minute. So then I'm going to factor out a GCF, and then I'm going to solve, okay? So I see that I already have this one factored. So this allows me to break into two equations. I have 3n equals 0, and I have n plus 2 equals 0. So two equations. Well, this one's pretty easy. I divide by 3, so n is going to equal 0. This one, I need to subtract 2, so n would equal negative 2. And what these numbers are, they are x-intercepts or the roots or zeros of the quadratic function. Okay, so that means we're actually going to put them on the number line, and they go on the x-axis. So instead of starting out on the y-axis, we're going to start out on the x-axis. They have to go on the yellow line on the x. So the first one is 0. So the first one is going to go in the middle. The second one is at -2. So those are pretty close together. And the shape of this graph is a smile. Okay, it's a smile. And this is called a parabola. It's called a parabola. And I know it's a smile because everything's positive up here. Okay, everything's positive. Okay, let's try this next one. So I see I can take out a 7. So 7 divided by 7 is 1. -35 divided by 7 is -5. Then I have 2 D's and 1 D, so I know I can take out a D. So I have 7D and I have 1D minus 5 equals 0. Okay, so solving, I have 7D equals 0 and D minus 5 equals 0. And I know that I have to add 5. So D is equal to 5. So my first point is going to be at 5. And this one dividing by 7, D is 0. And again, things are positive. So I'm going to make myself a smile. Those 2 points are the roots or the zeros. They are x-intercepts. All right, now this next one, it doesn't look like this. So the first thing I have to do is move the -10x. So I do that by adding. So now I have x squared plus 10x equals 0, which is what I need. Okay, so now we need to factor out. Well, I've got a 1 and a 10. So I'm not going to be able to do anything with those. What about my x's? I can take out an x. So if I take out 1x, I'm left with x. A 1x plus 10 equals 0. So again, 2 equations. The first one is x equals 0. The second one is x plus 10 equals 0. So to solve this one, if I subtract 10, I come up with x is -10. So the first point is there at -10. Now this one's already solved, x equals 0. So I don't have to do anything with that one. And again, everything's positive, and it's going to be a smile. It's going to be a smile. Okay, so let's keep going. We need to factor something out, split into our 2 equations, and we're going to go ahead and sketch our graph. So hit pause, see what you can factor out of both of these, and we'll see what our 2 equations are. All right, so I'm going to take out a 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. -16 divided by 4, that's a -4, and I have an A. I'm done. I can't do anything else. So 4, A minus 4 equals 0. So now this one's interesting because I'm only going to have one answer. Notice how there's no variable here. So the only answer I have is A minus 4. So A would equal 4. So that's just a single point. Okay, that's just a single point. There is nothing else I can do on that one. Now this one, on the other hand, let's take out a 7. 14 divided by 7, that's a 2. 7 divided by 7, that's a 1. Now I have 2 r's and an r, so I can take out an r. So I have 7r, 2r plus 1 equals 0. So this is what I want to see. I want to see a variable. So 7r equals 0, 2r plus 1 equals 0. So there's my 2 equations. This one's pretty easy. Divide by 7, so r would be 0. So my first point is at 0. Now solving this one, that's times 2 plus 1, so minus 1 divide 2, and it's okay to get decimals. Minus 1, 2r equals -1, divide by 2, r is -0.5, so -0.5 is going to be really close to that. And again, everything's still positive, so I have this parabola. Okay, 2 more. Now remember, these are not ready yet because I don't see the 0. So we have to get to standard form. So that means I need to move everything to the other side. So how am I going to move this 18w to the other side? Yeah, I'm going to subtract. So negative 6w squared minus 18w equals 0. So what can I take out of negative 6w, negative 18? Well, first thing I see is I can take out a negative. And then I know I can divide by 6 because 6 goes into 18. So this would be a positive 1 then, and a positive 3. And then I have two w's and a w. So let's take out a w. So negative 6w, and I'm left with a 1w plus 3 equals 0. So again, two equations, negative 6w equals 0. So that's w equals 0. I don't necessarily need to divide by negative 6 because I know that's going to equal 0. W plus 3 equals 0. And again, there's a 1 there. Minus 3. 1w equals negative 3, which means w equals negative 3. I don't need to divide by 1. That doesn't change anything. So my first point is at 0. My second point is at negative 3. And I have a parabola. Okay, again, move your 42z. It's positive, so move it across. It becomes negative. So 14z squared minus 42z equals 0. Now, what can I take out of 14 and 42? Well, I think I can take out a 7 because 7 goes into 14. So 7 divided by 14 is 2. Negative 42 divided by 7, that's a negative 6. And I have 2z's and 1z. Let's take 1 out. So 7z, 2z minus 6. Oh, gosh, I think I can go farther. I see a 2z minus 6 there. Let's back up. I need to go a little farther. So I'm going to leave my z's there, but I need to realize that there's a 2 and a negative 6. I can take out a 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and negative 6 divided by 2, that's a negative 3. So that takes me down even further. So 14z is my GCF, and I have a 1z minus 3. That's much easier to solve. So 14z equals 0. Again, divide by 14, that's not going to change. Z is 0. And z minus 3 equals 0. Add my 3. Z is 3. So here is my parabola. Okay, two more here. First one's ready. Second one is not. Second one we need to set equal to 0. So we're going to have to move some things around, and I think we might move this one this way this time. Just simply because the p cubed is the bigger one, and that might make our life a little easier. So let's go ahead and start over here. Let's take out a 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 36 divided by 4 is 9. There's 3 x's, 2 x's. I can take out 2. So 4x squared, a 1x plus 9. So 4x squared equals 0. And even if it's an x squared, x is still going to equal 0. As if I'm not adding or subtracting anything to 0, the answer is going to be 0. 1x plus 9 equals 0. X is equal to 9, negative, because I have to subtract my 9. So negative 9 and 0. And again, I still have a parabola. Okay, so this one, let's go ahead and move this negative 2p squared to this side. So I have 0 equals 9p cubed minus, well, these are like terms, so minus 3p squared. That makes my life even easier. Negative 5 plus 2 is going to give me a negative 3. So now if I factor out things that are in common, I can take out a 3. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. Negative 3 divided by 3 is negative 1. And if I have 3 p's and 2 p's, I can take out 2 p's. So I have 3p squared. A 3p minus 1 equals 0. Okay, so we've got 3p squared equals 0. So p equals 0. Again, dividing by 0 and taking the square root, it's going to be 0. I'm not adding or subtracting anything. 3p minus 1 equals 0. I need to add my 1. So 3p is equal to 1. Divide by 3, p is 1/3, which is 0.33. So again, this one is going to be really close together. It's really skinny. It's a parabola also. All right, so see what you can do with your homework today. We're going to move on to the next piece of factoring tomorrow as we look at crisscross and as we look at moving into factored form.